Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week, as we always do on a Saturday, with an album review, going through an entire album song by song, exploring each track in isolation and how it fits into the larger artwork. What's interesting is we actually have two requests for Major Parkinson albums. We're going to be looking at one of them today, though. It'll be really interesting if we end up checking the other one out. It's generally close to this, but it's all randomized, so we'll see how that goes in the future. We are going to be looking at the Blackbox album this time around, though. We have 9 tracks at just 47 minutes in length. Of that 47 minutes, we have 2 songs that average out to 10 minutes each. And then everything else, it's in 2 sub 2 minutes all the way up to 5 to 6 minutes. So we actually have quite a few short tracks in here, possibly interludes, followed by some medium tracks, and 2 long tracks that I think are going to sort of be the cornerstones of this album, as they are pretty much perfectly at the end of the first third and the end of the second third of this album. Just looking at the length of tracks, the length of each track alone, I can already see a little bit of pacing, some planning going into the order of these tracks. So I'm kind of curious if we explore anything lyrically or musically thematic that might align with some of this pacing as well. Anyways, that's enough preamble. Let's get into this. Checking out the first track, Lover, Lower Me Down. Alright, so that's a classic opening right there. I've heard that in quite a few mainstream pop rock tracks, maybe. Just the drum bit, but I don't think I've ever heard it with such an eerie, ominous follow-up. There's a little bit of brightness coming out of the synth, both the melody and the timbre of the instrument. The higher synth, that is. But I mean, stuff like that's still super dissonant. So that half-step rise the first time, and then a larger, more fulfilled rise. The vocals feel like they're pushing towards a realization of sorts, while the music underneath returns back down to the darker, less certain tones. And then we have this choir here. Kind of an optimistic type of folk. Ooh. kind of got a read on that time signature. I'm thinking it's a fast 5/8, but you know, an eerie, isolating guitar melody here. A little bit of uplift though. What is this? I know that's going into the next track. I don't want to stop it. I'm kind of upset too, because the more I look at it, tracks 1 and 2 together would be about 10 minutes long, 10 and a half, and then a 1-minute interlude, and then a 10-minute song, and then a 1-minute interlude, and then a 15-minute song, and a 2-ish minute interlude. I wonder if that's what it is. Should I have run these together? Am I supposed to listen to 1 and 2 combined? Is it no different than the longer tracks on here, just split into 2 for some reason? I don't know. I also have a little voice at the back of my head telling me this entire song is going to run together. There might not ever be a good place to stop it. Regardless, this track, what is it doing? It starts off with a very anthemic pop rock drum part. And I could hear these feel good guitar parts, maybe even horns or strings coming in after that and bringing in a ton of brightness, kind of doing something that you would expect from, like, I don't know, U2 or something. And then the song doesn't, though. It goes in a very different direction. It brings in this darkness, not just in the chord progression, but in the instrumentation too. These are very warm, resonant, wide sounds. They have a darker coloring to them. Could be strings, could be like copper brass, which tends to be a bit darker than like silver brass. But it is all, I still think, synthesizer at the end of the day. This is electronic music, and while I'm coming at it from an acoustic perspective, that isn't necessarily how they would have approached it, and it's not necessarily any commentary on the specific instruments used here. I do think most of this is digital, and whether they are using digital acoustic instruments, such as, a VST of a brass section or something like that. It doesn't really matter. The end result is that I'm hearing stuff that reminds me of warmer strings, of darker colored or darker timbred brass instruments. And it's just kind of eerie. Like I mentioned, the chord progression, there's a lot of tension in here. There's a little bit of dissonance at times. Just the instrumentation and the notes themselves produce something that dreary, I think, is a good word for it. I wouldn't call it depressive. There are certainly a couple sections that feel a bit antagonistic, maybe in like a driving anxiety kind of way, a little hint of danger, but I would not call this dangerous music either. It just feels like, more to me, a pitch black night on a pier, storm just crashing everywhere, and you're just sitting there at the end of this dock, allowing the void of the darkness to wrap over you, facing out towards the water, no lights out there at all. Maybe there's a city behind you. If you turn around, you can find light, but for now, you are looking into the void. That's what it feels like. Maybe even, as the song implies by the title, Lover, Lower Me Down, it's an implication of preparing to enter the void, to, in this literal sense, to get on the boat and journey outward into the dark. It's not depressive, it's not dangerous. There is a couple of sections that are a bit unsettling, but for the most part, it's just sort of gloomy and dreary. But it's not that exclusively, and I think this is what makes it exciting to listen to. I had mentioned a couple of times a brighter timbre, a synth maybe at a couple places, the choir that comes in towards the end. There's a couple instruments that carry not just higher tones, but usually a brighter sound as well. It's really great pairing to emphasize the darkness of these harmonies by using darker tones and the brightness of these melodies with brighter tones. It's just a really smart way to combine these things. But they're always sort of effervescent, ephemeral. As soon as you feel like you've heard it, it's already gone. The moment you recognize, oh, there's some brightness, there's some optimism in here, the line's already finished. You are mostly just catching on to the remnants of the decay of it, what was left. There aren't a lot of lines that tend to stick around. I think the choir at the end is the one that actually lasted for long enough time for me to recognize what was happening and then lean into it and listen to that particular aspect of the song. But for the most part, a lot of it is a little flourish here and there. And it even shows up in the darker instrumentation too, where we'll have a chord progression where maybe the third chord has a little bit of uplift to it, implying something a little more positive, but the next chord returns back to something gloomier. These little pockets of positivity, and I want to stick with that too, terminology wise. I don't know that I have a word for it in particular, just as I don't feel the darker side is melancholic or depressive or anything like that. It's just sort of gloomy. It's a weight without the strong emotional connection to it. I also feel the same thing about the positivity. At best, I might apply a sense of hopefulness to these, but there isn't a sort of sorrow or giving up that it would be hopeful from. It is just a positive element within this more negative one, but I don't have a specific emotion to tie to it yet. It is, more than anything, still kind of an atmosphere. I don't think it represents this hypothetical character I see sitting at the end of this dock, but it does represent the atmosphere around them. If the gloominess is some sort of darkness and, rain, maybe this is the clouds possibly clearing, the moon shining down and providing a little bit of light to this area. If nothing else, maybe just glints of the moon beyond a cloud, coming through and shining for a second before being covered up again. There's also the vocalist. I don't know if this is going to be the vocalist we hear throughout. This could just be an intro track of sorts, but this dude has that old, weary, worn down, I've seen too much, lived too long type of voice. It's lower in pitch. It sounds age-worn. It has a bit of that rasp and crackle to it that isn't forced. It feels very natural. It's just the characteristic that their voice has taken on over the years, usually that of an older man. It also has a nice resonance to it. It's not too thin, but it isn't too wide either. I think it has a really good placement to it. And honestly, Some of it is probably production, some of it is just his natural timbre, but it sounds incredibly soothing. I could listen to an entire audiobook narrated by this guy, and I particularly think in that direction too, because this isn't really sung too much. There are a few words in here that I felt an alignment of pitch, particularly when we hit that section where I was pointing out the home note and then the half step up for a bit of tension, and then the massive leap up that feels like it begins to push towards resolution. We hear some brightness as that continues to rise, but the music underneath is returning back to that eerie dissonance. And so we kind of have a schism between the melody and the harmony in that moment. We actually heard that twice. If anything in this song could be called a chorus, I would probably call it that. Most of this track feels rather linear to me, but at that moment I picked up that this is probably going to be looped, and that's probably because it's one of the rare musical, or maybe I should say melodic moments that I heard in the vocals. Because aside from that section where I can hear these distinct pitches being sung, everything else is sort of spoken word. Maybe there is an implied pitch to it. Maybe the notes chosen for these words or syllables is very purposeful, but the end result is that it sounds rather, if, at best sing-songy, but at worst, spoken word. And so we have this gloomy tale told to us. Well, we have a gloomy atmosphere with words coming through that are spoken to us as if someone is recounting something. That's kind of how I feel about it. And they're coming at it with this world-worn voice, very heavy. And that weight and the darkness and the lower pitch ties in so nicely with the instrument choice and the harmonies, chord progressions played in this. It creates a very evocative sound, an atmosphere that's palpable. I think it's quite difficult to listen to this and not immediately get swept up into this world, into this atmosphere that they are crafting. Let's hit some lyrics on this, see what's going on there. There is a sort of dark ritual to this, and you can pick up on it immediately. It says, I will drag your bones across the hill, over scorching sheets to make you real. I will light the lanterns in the brome, peel the hair locks from your comb, drag the old man and the sea under skeleton rags from Bimini, transfixed by marlins in your daiquiri. Carry the weight of the world in your hand. What a feeling. So he has maybe metaphorical, but maybe also literal bones of this person, their body, and he's dragging it across hills, eventually lighting lanterns and taking hair from their comb. A lot of this to me reads as a resurrection ritual to bring someone back. And he says that he will do anything, drowning the sea under the skeleton rags, carrying the weight of the world in his hands. This entire person's world, their ability to exist in this plane, to have their life back, is the weight that he carries alone. And he'll do anything to bring this person back. It says, in dreams of lavender, far beyond the maple tree, I was taking the easy way out. I was proud. Now I'm kneeling before the glorious refrigerator poets of the world. Lover, lower me down. So I don't know what it is about the dreams of lavender beyond the maple trees being an easy way out, but maybe in that sense he was trying to move on, exploring other things, going beyond maybe what was around him and exploring things in other areas, maybe ways to get his mind off of the loss of a loved one. And here, though, at the beginnings of this ritual, he says, lover, lower me down. He's ready to maybe even figuratively descend into hell or the underworld in general, maybe not the Christian hell, but just the place where spirits reside, in an attempt to find this person's spirit and bring them back. I don't know about this kneeling before the glorious refrigerator poets of the world. I looked up refrigerator poet, and that does not seem to be a standard phrase that everyone knows. I couldn't find anything that would align to that. However, there is also a poem called Refrigerator, and so it's kind of difficult to search for this phrase without hundreds of search results for this poem. But that's kind of what I get out of this. It's sort of a feeling. I can explain it through a couple of the lines, but I'm not entirely sure that that's what's happening here. But it is a preparation to do whatever is necessary to bring this person back, including figuratively or maybe literally. We may find this descent into the underworld, the story of this album. But it does show the extent that this person is willing to go to bring this person back. And I think the dark aura around all of this works. There is hope to have this person back, but it is also black magic that this person's playing with. No one is supposed to be God. Bringing people back from the dead is usually, in most pop culture fiction, a terrible idea. It either doesn't work, or there's repercussions you didn't expect, or it works in like the wrong way, monkey paws wish style. So yeah, there's definitely trouble brewing for anyone who attempts this. And that takes us to the track Night Hitcher. As we heard, the music pretty much cleanly rolled into this one. Let's see where Major Parkinson is taking us with this. So we're in a 5 here again. I don't know what he's saying, but I heard some pretty cool rhyming going on. The drums are super crunchy. I don't know if that's also a bass synth alongside it. But even this, it sounds rather dark. Super tense chords like this. But there's still a bit of hopefulness to it. Super reverby guitar up on the side too. Really sets the mood for this. I'm sorry, what? There's so much reverb and echo here, it gets muddy. Purposeful, I think. There's such a clarity to everything else we've heard. know, you wouldn't think a tambourine would fit here, but it's sort of muted, works. A little bit of shimmer to the darkness, a nice balance. Oh yeah. Oh dang, I thought we were gonna go for a bit of a spacey guitar solo there. We do have this kind of sci-fi synth off on the side. Not quite in the same spots that high reverb guitar was though. Dang, I've been muted. Okay, so I kind of wish that both of these tracks were that I had run them together because there are a lot of similarities between the two. They capture very similar moods. There's also, you know, the fact that they're both heavy and weighty and gloomy with bits of positivity snuck in there, that it's juxtaposed heavily with bits of tension and dissonance, very eerie sounding moments to contrast with those brighter, hopeful ones. Allowing the gloominess to be a sort of neutral position in the middle that we kind of hear darker and brighter sides of. This one also continues to be rather theatric and soundtracky. I could very clearly hear some of these sounds in film, particularly the more instrumental parts, maybe with the less esoteric time signatures that we have in here, but the string sections and the chord progressions are 100% like slasher film, just like mainstays. And I think that's interesting too, to kind of see sort of a filmic element to this track. And, you know, the first song even put me very clearly in a scene. This one, not so much, but there was also a little bit more to dig into on the musical side that my mind didn't really have a chance to interact with it on that more emotional side. But the song does end, which kind of reinforces my idea that maybe this album is a lengthy track and then an interlude, and then a lengthy track and an interlude, and this lengthy track just happened to be split, or a lengthy song just happened to be split into two tracks. I really think 1 and 2 should have been listened together though. There's some interesting stuff going on in here. The drum beat doesn't change. This is the backbone for the entire 6-minute run here. It is this crunchy, gritty drums. There's possibly a lower end bassy synth played alongside it to give it even more impact and crunch. It gives us this sort of awkward 5/4 thing. It is a 2-bar phrase, so we're looking at 10 beats each. The way I kind of hear it is sort of 4/4/2. Although honestly, the first 4 and the second 1, there's kind of some weird stuff going on there where I don't think it really fits in groupings of 5 or 4. But the general idea is that you have this 8-beat phrase, and then you have 9 and 10, and those are both a bit more staccato and create these 2 like harsh stops that everybody joins in on before moving back to the more legato style stuff, holding out notes that we'll see on the first 8 beats of this phrase. It creates something that's kind of difficult to groove along to. I found, as I mentioned, I would count out 4, 4, and then the 2 hits. You may have seen me nodding my head 8 times and then going side to side for the last 2. That's sort of how I felt it, but it doesn't really work perfectly with the phrasing either. Initially, when I found it was 10, I began to conduct it in groups of 5. I think my hand was off screen for that, but that doesn't really feel right either. The 2 at the end feel really weird in it because it kind of feels like it should be 5/3/2. That's kind of how I view the rhythmic grouping there. So it comes off as rather obtuse rhythmic phrasing despite the standard time signature. I mean, 5/4 isn't super normal, but it's also not odd either. But they find a way to make it rather obtuse and difficult to groove to. And I found that I could never just turn my brain off and nod along to it in a way that felt right. I had to actively think of this 4/4/2 idea in order to suss it out. So yeah, it's kind of awkward in that sense. And we had some awkward rhythmic stuff on the last track too. We had 6/4, we had a 5/8, and we had some 4/4 thrown in there too. So they're definitely not afraid to play around with meter and rhythmic phrasing at all. But that drum part in this track, it's present through the entire song. It never changes. It's this static backbone to the track, which is it's a blessing and curse depending on how you want to approach this. My brain wants to put this into the realm of post-rock. That being that we have one idea that sits on the bottom of the song and we develop things on top of it. We explore different harmonies, different melodies. We continue to add more layers to it. By the end of the song, we are hearing a brand new section that still features the main chorus of this track. The steady Betty confetti thing. I don't know what he said between those words, but that rhyme stuck with me. But yeah, we hear that several times across the track, and every time those lyrics come back, there's different music with it, with the music at the end being some of the darkest parts of the song that we've heard. So this is kind of neat. It's a sense of theme and variation, but the theme itself, which is the rhythmic part, doesn't really change much. We just put different variety of things on top of it. We build up from it in different ways, trash that, start from scratch, and build up from that in different ways. And I think that's a pretty cool way to go about doing it. The song never feels totally fresh. There's always a part of it that feels very familiar. And honestly, this feels like a 6-minute song to me. Although 6-minute songs aren't that long, honestly, it felt long to me. There was definitely a part when I was like, okay, I get what you're doing here. Can we wrap it up? And that's kind of that post-rock element where a lot of it is building up on familiar ideas and crafting a sound that's generally similar throughout. But if you're enjoying the vibe and the nuanced exploration that post-rock does a really good job of, you're going to really enjoy this track. Like I said, blessing and a curse, but I do think it's pretty cool to build a track off of this idea. Conceptually, what if we just have one rhythm? How can we keep this interesting throughout? There's also the production on this one, which I think is interesting. If we go back to my idea of sitting by the water and being lowered down into the underworld. You would have to go through the water first, or maybe the water is the portal to the underworld. That would be a pretty cool visual. Regardless, the very first time we hear the Steady Betty Confetti line in this, it comes in first with just the vocals and some strings and the drums and the bass and maybe guitar flourish. And then these other vocals come in, this choir, and it's tons of reverb. And it muddies everything up. Kind of like being underwater. It isn't really wavy like underwater tends to sound like, but it is ripply, which immediately reminds me of water. Plus, when I think of muddy audio, maybe some people actually think of actual mud, like wet dirt, but I kind of picture dirty water. Maybe that's just me, but it's also a liquid visual or a liquid feeling that I apply when I talk about muddy production. So this whole liquid theme just continues to crop up on this album for me, and I think that's pretty interesting. The vocals doing what they do, kind of spoken word, a little bit of pitch stuff, so it is kind of sing-songy. Still in here, nothing that I would really define as pure singing. Not that I'm trying to gatekeep singing, I'm just trying to be analytical here. Sing-songy is how I would still describe these. Rhythmic, semi-pitched focus, but really, to me, it's all about the vocals. I mean, the lyrics themselves being placed in a very poetic fashion rather than a sung fashion. And honestly, I think that's... Oh, no, the bridge. So this was interesting because we began to introduce a couple of different instruments on top of and around all of this atmospheric stuff. We got a couple solos in here, very tense and dissonant solos too, which put a specific flavor on the middle of this track, kind of removed a lot of that hopefulness that I kind of heard from other instruments earlier, and just kind of focuses on the darker, gloomier, more pessimistic side that the album has sort of touched on but never leaned into up until this point. But there was a section where off on the side, this really reverbery, narrow, higher pitched guitar tone came in. It feels very sci-fi to me, and a very spacey, space rock guitar tone. And I was like, dude, this is going to be excellent. On top of this gloominess, it's going to be perfect. We're going to bring back the reverb from the vocals in that earlier chorus. Like, this is going to be great. And then the guitar just never plays. Another instrument takes its solo slot. Was not a big fan of that from a musical perspective. And from a thematic one, I couldn't really make heads or tails of what it was supposed to mean. So I feel a little underwhelmed about that. I do wish we had gotten that full guitar solo there instead of it just being ornamental. We're a fifth of the way through this album though, and I'm kind of sold. It's very theatric, very dramatic, very over the top, very moody. Lots of varies going on here. Like, it knows what it is, and it just leans into that all the way. And it's just like, that's what I do. I'm not trying to be anything else. We got gloomy, dark, dreary music. Not depressive, just dark. I think the album art kind of captures that feeling pretty well. Is there water in the album art? Yeah, I guess so. But there's also space and stormy clouds. You know, the album art may have influenced. I never looked at it too closely, but you know, subconsciously, this stuff gets locked into your brain and it certainly alters the way that you interact with the art. Let's look at some lyrics on this one. All right, in this one, there's a lot less lyrics than I thought, given how often the vocals were up on the song. There's also a lot of repetition in it, though. The beginning says, "Hey, come on over to the passenger side. I promise this, eternal bliss, a kiss will ease your pain. Descend into the shattering tide, in the abyss ephemeris, a kiss will ease your pain." So we do have a descent here, which is, lower me down. That was brought in from the last track. We are moving into a dark abyss. So still kind of has this feeling of watery depth, darkness in general. A lot of the vibes I picked up from the first track. In fact, I even used the word void describing the atmosphere of track 1, and here we are into an abyss. But this idea of a kiss will ease your pain. A kiss from the narrator? Also, who's the narrator talking to? Are they talking to the person from the first song, or is this the person from the first song talking to their loved one? I'm missing perspective here. The second set, what I would call the chorus, possibly given just how often we hear it, much like the first one, is a group of 2 stacks of 3 lines, though these are a little longer than those. It says, steady, I think you're ready, Betty, see the moon behind the black confetti, when the morning chimney swallow croons under fluorescent skies. Steady, I think you're ready, Betty, say hello to the man with the black machete, when the diamond hits the silver spoon, open your eyes. And I have no idea what any of this is supposed to mean. Other than the fact that this person is being lowered into this, and they're told to, it kind of sets the atmosphere for what's going on, and then it gives them instruction. Say hello to the man with the black machete, wait until the diamond hits the spoon, then open your eyes. And it ends with the same line the last track did, lover, lower me down. So I'm a bit lost on this one. I don't know particularly what is going on in it, but I have this general concept of depths being lowered into a dark void, and there being some sort of ritualistic steps to take on this. So the next song's only a minute long. I'm going to run that into track 4. Combined, we're looking at 11 minutes. So let's dive in.
Someone told me long ago, you must believe in magic. I stared into the tapestry of dinosaurs and cogwheels, salamander silhouettes, paper planes and rocket ships. You must believe in magic. Your creatures made of plastic is the first thing I recall. And once in a dream, I stole my father's eyes, and I climbed out of the skylight. I followed the moon over the rooftops to the silent salamander sky.
I think this is one of the first times we've heard some very directly, obviously sung vocal parts.
Where the sirens echoed in the snow so many years ago. You must
So this one's just going to be piano and vocals.
magic.
Interesting fade in, as if this person walked to the area this was, or opened a door where this was being played.
Realizing happiness and joy is just a construct of a self-deception. Should it keep you from lying? Plato once said, hey, come me ahead. Necessity is the mother of invention. Did it keep him from dying? I think you got a problem. You got a problem. I think you're thinking too much. Don't trust the music teacher who's quoting Nietzsche to bear the silence of the Scotch. I think you got a problem. You got a problem. Gavin didn't love you very much.
very interesting rhythmic flow on this. Many of the instruments sort of locking into the space of other instrument lines, creating something a bit dense rhythmically between the drums and the pizzicato. Very flowy. Another 5 section. I like that texture layering. What is that? Violin and electric violin? A little bit like a pub folk track for a second. Variation on that last melody. Twinkling is a nice addition to this. That fluidity that it has, I don't know how I missed this earlier. A lot of the songs in 3/4. It's a very watery time signature. A little bit of a child's rhyme there.
Short redemption of life, juvenile dementia. When a temporal perception is lost, I will guide you through the pictures as we ride through the mouth of Hieronymus Bosch.
Dude, this drummer.
Silent like a fly on a windshield in the schoolyard. Another thesis of Heidegger gave you a voice. The structural transformation of the public sphere you dismembered. To some extent you would kill us then, like Salvador.
The sharp, dissonant guitar against the whispers. Dude. Somewhere in the middle of that song, for whatever reason, I challenged myself to give the elevator pitch of this. If I had just one sentence to sell somebody on Major Parkinson's Blackbox, what would that sentence be? And I landed on, what if Dream Theater worked with Tom Waits to create a dark folk track with Emily Autumn doing electronic and string composition? And I think that's where I'm at with this. And I like that. I think this song in particular really shows the strength of the format. What we heard prior to this on tracks 1 and 2 were more of, it was an appetizer, right? Setting the stage, the scene, kind of getting an understanding of the instruments, the type of music we would be listening to, the influences, a little bit of folk, a little bit of electronic, a little bit of rock. But for the most part, those opening 2 tracks stuck with the vibe for the majority of them. Very post-rock style. Here's the foundation, here's the atmosphere. We'll do a little bit of variation from start to finish, but very focused on one specific idea. This track, though, takes the formula and says, let's do a linear progressive track. Let's tell a story from start to finish, not just with the atmosphere, but with the storytelling of the lyrics, with the vocal delivery. Let's jump between 2 vocalists. Let's do layered vocals. Let's have entire sections dedicated more towards electronic or folk or rock parts of it. Let's bring in a noisy metal section to wrap the song up. It's no longer about including little dashes of these inspirations, but presenting full sections of the song based around these influences. But what keeps it really connected and tied down, and it never really loses its foundation, it's actually twofold. One, it's the general sound, the atmosphere of it. It retains a dark moodiness throughout. This is something that is thematically holding the entire album together. But the other half of the equation is the production. I mentioned about track 2 having that wavy muddiness going on in its chorus with the choir vocals that came in on high reverb. And I mentioned how that felt intentional because it didn't match the rest of the production. This, I think, is a very clear presentation. It's a clear understanding of what type of production they use in their music. Every decision in here is purposeful. Placements of instruments, combinations of sounds. When we do texture layering, what do the 2 instruments sound like together? Does it work? Does it not work? When we do harmony, when we do counterpoint, when we do 3-way, not necessarily polyrhythmic ideas, but just multiple rhythmic devices going off at the same time, how does all of this work together? Is it a cluttered mess, or is it pristine like clockwork? Every single time, it's not even like a more often than not situation. Every single moment in this song is crafted to a T for perfection. The balance of the sounds, the interlocking parts, when things work together, when we have parts in opposition of each other, doing 2 totally different ideas, all of it is for a positive element in the song. Even the rare choice for dissonant or clashing tones is used for maximum effect as a spice. It is something to put in there to change up the flavor a little bit and to get out of the way of the focus so that the emotion of the song can be felt more than these individual concepts. It is a masterclass in how to bring composition and production together to work in a unified whole towards a singular vision. And of course, that vision is honestly rock opera. Am I wrong here? Rock opera might be a little outside the realm of this, given that there is so much string work going on that's not guitar and bass, that the percussive work is not always drum kit. But I feel like there's enough rock identity in here for me to call it a rock opera. Regardless, though, this feels very much like a stage play, a musical put on. Every part of the music not only works well on its own, I think this works just fine by itself, but I can very clearly and vividly see a stage production alongside this multimedia work right here, where the music accompanies and elevates the visuals, which accompany and elevate the music. When I listen to this, I'm not actually in too far of a different mindset than when we checked out Jesus Christ Superstar a few weeks back. And a lot of that comes down to presentation. How is this played? How do things fit together? How is the production enabling all of this to happen simultaneously without feeling disparate? Fantastic. Now I'm not going to be able to talk about this track in detail too much. I brought up Dream Theater for a good reason. This song in particular feels like one of their epics, and it's just really difficult to break down 10 minutes of highly diverse, highly complex, and deep music. I did not pick up half of what was being laid down on this track. General broad strokes, sure, I could tell you generally what the song did, but more specifics like we talked about with tracks 1 and 2, nah, dude, there's just too much going on for me to be able to dig into each and every interesting or complex or neat or intriguing aspect of the track. But I do want to bring up one particular thing that I noticed in here that retroactively I can certainly apply to my memories of track 1 and 2, but I didn't necessarily think about it back then, at least not as much as it came to my attention on this song. And this is the composition of the music. There's a lot of atmospheric work on here, ornamental ideas, little effects on the sides that help elevate these tracks from just being gloomy songs to being evocative works of theatric imagery turned into sonic representation. But I think when you look at just the core music, not the outskirts, not the stuff that you hear once and then disappears, but like the drums, the guitars, the violin, the synth, the bass. When I listen to these instruments, I actually hear some very cool stuff. First of all, instrument usage. The way these instruments are used show a vast understanding of how these instruments tend to be used in their home environment by professionals. This isn't a case of, hey, we're a symphonic metal band, we know how to write metal music, and we have a violinist, and they're just going to play the guitar part, but it's going to sound cool because it's a violin and not a guitar. This is absolutely, hey, we have all these instruments here. We got the violin. What can the violin do? Oh, we got pizzicato, we got tremolo bowing. We have runs, we have harmony. Like, what do you want the violin to do? They have a lot of roles in classical music. We can choose all of them in this case. And the same goes for the guitar. There is some clean electric stuff that's handled totally different than the harsh distorted guitar work. When it comes to the vocals, I mean, we have atmospheric vocals, we have call and response, we have ornamental vocals, we have harmonized vocals. They're all over the place. So many roles. And that's what I'm talking about. It's the versatility of the instrumentation that, to me, it shows that whoever composed this, I don't know if this is a case where they have a lead composer for the project or if, everybody contributes to it. But these instruments are all being used in varied ways that absolutely fit the moment. And if that instrument doesn't have much to add to the moment, they don't get used. This sounds like to me, and bear with me, I can feel it in my tone. There's going to be a condescending element to this. I don't mean it, but it's gonna sound like it. I'm sorry. There's two ways to write music. One is to say, these are the instruments I have to play. Let's make a song out of it. This is how a lot of rock and metal is made. You have a couple guitarists, a bassist, a vocalist, and a drummer. So you make music that uses that. The other side is I have a vision for a song. I need to acquire the tools in order to craft this. And I feel like that perspective is where a lot of this music comes from. It almost feels unflinching in its width, in its passion, its aspirations. There's the word. that it wants all of these different sounds and it acquires them. This song in particular goes through a lot of different modes and ideas, different vibes, different groups of instruments. And again, some instruments come in for a moment. I mean, there were some bells in here, probably synthesized bells, but still. Whoever composed this said, you know what, for 5 seconds, I want a glockenspiel in here. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And it's just uncompromising in the vision. And I love that. But the other thing that stands out to me in the composition is melody and harmony writing. In particular, I heard this very clearly on track 3's Before the Helmets, which is just vocals and piano. And so I got a really clear view of the harmonic resonance in here. And I'm listening to the chord progression, and I'm like, okay, not too out of the ordinary. Definitely hitting on some dark chords I expect. Chord progression, we're moving from specific parts of the key in expected ways for this type of gloominess. Well, track 3 wasn't super gloomy, but we'll come back to that, I suppose. But then we had a turn, a little harmonic twist in the middle. And we introduced some more complex chords that you don't typically hear in simpler music. Mainstream rocks, pops, even the folk element that I hear crop up from time to time. This would be a bit too complex for typically. It's something that you traditionally hear in classical adjacent works, maybe classical music, but maybe also musicals. And the more I listened to what the piano was playing, the more I realized it wasn't just playing a 4-chord progression. It was telling a story with the chords consistently shifting and evolving. It's something I noticed going to track 4, and I'd actually put money down if we checked out tracks 1 and 2, we'd probably find some of this in there as well. Maybe not as consistently focused on this. There might be a couple of places where we do have like a 4-chord loop that we keep working with. But the flexibility of the harmony and the expansive chords used stand out to me as someone who understands chord theory pretty well. Maybe they have an academic background in it. Maybe it's just their guts. They sit at a keyboard and they play what seems to be random combinations of chords, but something in their body is telling them that this is right. Could also just be random noodling until you find something right too. But regardless, the end result is more complex than I would expect from a mainstream music. And there's a lot of elements in here that feel very popish. I don't know if I would call this pop rock. There's definitely an electronic element to it. No, I would not call this pop rock. Not by a long shot, actually. The vocals can be poppy at times, the chord progressions can be poppy and digestible at times, but I think overall it's too cinematic and too theatric to be considered pop anything. This is more in the realm of art, art rock, art electronic, I don't know, art pop maybe. But it still impresses me, the harmonic width and chord theory that's being applied here that helps these sections feel more emotive than they would be without. It elevates it from, yeah, that's gloomy to, oh, that's gloomy but complex. There's more to it here. It makes you want to dive in, and it's quite possible that the additional emotional complexity to it is what is telling me this more visual story. I'm really curious who writes for Major Parkinson, because this is not something that your average music maker is going to create. This is someone who has a knack for music, either, like I said, from an academic background or is just really good guts. I don't know, man. I'm going to lean towards academic, though, or self-taught. Either way, this dude knows what he's doing. And I mean, it creates very evocative atmospheres, and it's all because of these more complex chordal elements. I did like the expanded vocalization on this one. We had, I think this is the same female vocal that was on Night Hitcher as the choir. I like that we get to hear them isolated, but a little bit of call and response, a little bit of harmony, the texture layering on there. We had some cool texture layering with an acoustic violin and an electric violin in the middle of the track. The melody writing on this is consistently catchy, ear-grabbing. Catchy feels like the wrong word, because normally when we talk about something being catchy, it's like, oh, dude, I'm going to remember that in the future. I don't know that I would be able to hum any of what I've heard so far after reacting to this. But it definitely grabs me as a listener and forces me to engage with the material. Whether that is emotionally or more analytically, I'm here in the moment with the song completely undistracted. That doesn't happen with a lot of music. Usually I have to force myself to engage with it, which is part of the analytical listening, just kind of blocking everything out and saying, this is my focus right now. But this song demands it. And it's not like in a forceful way either. I just can't look away. It's got me by the hook some way or another. And I'm like, okay, dude, just take me wherever you're going to take me. I'm here for it. Let me hit some lyrics on these two. We'll push forward to the middle third. Before the Helmets focuses on a bit of childlike imagination. Now, it's only a 90-second song, so there's not a lot of lyrics here. It says, someone told me long ago, you must believe in magic. I stared into a tapestry of dinosaurs and cogwheels, salamander silhouettes, paper planes, and rocket ships. You must believe in magic. Your creatures made of plastic is the first thing I recall, and once in a dream I stole my father's eyes and I climb out of the skylight. I follow the moon over the rooftops to the silent salamander skies, danced in the midst across the asylum where the sirens echoed in the snow so many years ago. You must believe in magic. So I just take this as imagination in general. A tapestry of dinosaurs, kids and dinosaurs, man. I don't know what it is. Such a fascination with them. Talks about paper planes and rocket ships, creatures made of plastic. I kind of associate with action figures or dolls of some sort. And then it's interesting that he steals his father's eyes. Not sure. There's a metaphor there. I'm not quite understanding it. It says he climbed out towards the skylight and followed the moon to the silent salamander skies. Now, aside from the alliteration we have here of that constant S sound, we're bringing back the salamanders from earlier in the lyrics, talking about what he was seeing around his room. So I think this is just once again alluding to the element of not magic, but imagination, or maybe imagination is the magic, but for whatever helps you get through this, you must believe that there's more to this world than what meets the eye. Interestingly, where the other few tracks we've listened to so far have focused on a sort of simple symbolism of dissent and gloom in general, this one goes for a much stronger philosophical take on things. It starts off saying, realizing that happiness and joy are just a construct of a self-deception, should it keep you from lying? Plato once said, carve me a head, necessity is the mother of invention. Did it keep him from dying? I think you've got a problem, and the problem is you're thinking too much. Darwin didn't love you very much, but he gave you evolution and the institution that is your artificial crutch. This is where the chorus kicks in, go back to sleep. This is the age of the deep slumber. Don't be afraid of the blue skies. Enter the merry-go-under and see your life through the eyes of Isabel. And we kind of set up this idea. We have a very, well, here's a line I skipped over. It says, don't trust a music teacher who's quoting Nietzsche. There is this element of nihilism in here. It says, if you realize that happiness and joy are just things that you make up, they're constructs of self-deception, why would you keep from lying to yourself? Why would you keep happiness and joy out of your life just because you understand it's just chemicals in your brain? Is that really a worthwhile reason to not experience joy in your life? It's a worthwhile reason to have a nihilistic point of view about life. The music teacher quoting Nietzsche would quote, what was that music quote he was known for? Anyways, something about music being great, or like the main purpose of life, like the best art, something along those lines. But Nietzsche was also a well-known nihilist. It's a focus on people who find one or two ideas about a philosopher and stick with them and quote them often, not knowing the rest of the philosophy of the person. Yes, Nietzsche has spoken good about music in the past, but also, once again, a pretty strong and popular nihilist. Calls Darwin's information evolution that led to the institution that is your artificial crutch to rely on all of this knowledge to strip the joy out of life. Why would you do that? Just because you understand something better means that the magic has to be lost? And the chorus kicks in. Go back to sleep. This is the age of the deep slumber. So this is the age of being of not being awake, of not paying attention to things, of just sleeping through life. From one perspective, it could be people who are just oblivious to everything. Ignorance is bliss, after all, as they say. But it could also be people who suck the joy out of life, completely oblivious to the positive elements, directly addressing both the nihilists and those who think nothing in their life, just simply existing within it. From here, we go through a few stanzas, jumping back and forth between verse and this chorus about the age of the deep slumber. These verses, though, appear to reference art. Luckily, there was enough of these lines with annotations on them that sort of explained it and posted a picture of the art. But it simply questions, are you this art? Are you the ghost of Vermeer with a table-long leg staring into the light from above? This is the Ghost of Vermeer of Delft, which can be used as a table by Salvador Dali. Sure enough, it's a dude with one leg, just super long thigh and normal size calf, and he's got a bottle on his table leg. And it goes through a bunch of these: a basket of bread for the afterlife on a cabinet or a bedstand. I'm not quite sure what the purpose is of referencing all of this art. But there is a line that continues to come up. Isabel, show me life. I'll follow the lights into the hole. And this has to be that idea of deep slumber, of just going where things take you. Because how would a hole have a light for you to follow? A hole is just emptiness. There could be a light from within it, maybe, but I don't know. This sounds like following a false lead. This, after a couple back and forths here between the chorus and these art pieces, we have the female vocals come and say, call her, tell her that you love her madly, tell her that you need her badly, that you want to be her forever. Call her from your ivory tower, high above the virgin's bower, immolate your naked limbs and dance alone. And I just don't know. I don't know what any of this has to do with anything else. We move on and talk about juvenile dementia and Rorschach's redemption, temporal perception being lost and being guided through the pictures, which is that the narrator taking us through all these works of art? I don't know. I get very lost towards the end of this, but it ends with Isabel, show me life. I'll follow the lights into the hole. And I don't know. I thought I was pretty clear on what the story was for the album. And at this point, I wonder if it's a concept album at all. If it is, this part of the story is completely going over my head. And I can't even see how it relates to anything else other than chasing a loved one. Maybe Isabel is the bones that our narrator had in track 1, and he's descending down to still, I think, maybe get her soul for resurrection. It was mentioned that he would give up anything and do anything to resurrect this person. Maybe it's possible that becoming ignorant of the world or something along those lines is something he's willing to do. I don't know, though. Paralleling ignorance and nihilism is an interesting start, but I don't really feel like it does anything with that, at least not in a way that I understand. And that's the other part of the equation, is that I don't get this, so it's tough for me to really come to a conclusion at the end of this. I can tell you, though, I got a bit lost. Not too different from the music. This is something that, just like the music, would reveal itself over time. Multiple listens, multiple getting through the lyrics, possibly even knowing the rest of the album could help with this. With that said, we're going to move into track 5 and 6. Let's see what's going on here. So yeah, it started out a bit heavier, but this is very bright. It's joyful. It's a fun little 7/4 idea. Lots of polyrhythms though, polymeter even, I think, in here. And back to the eerie. We can't stay in anything positive for too long, can we? Carrying on though with its very theatric, thematic imagery. I'm sorry, what? There's that really big reverb on the vocals again. Oh, dude. Dude, that's so good. Switching the call and response to violin to xylophone, and then switching from xylophone to violin. Not xylophone, by the way, glockenspiel. It's so bizarre, man. Moving from the cellos and the toms, the big drums, into the cymbal work, the female vocals, violins. Beautiful. I'm waiting for that violin line to come back. Oh, that would have been a good time to bring it back. Okay. There it is. Now, what's funny is I was actually convinced it wasn't going to come back because I had begun to, explore what it might mean, right? And for a lot of this track, we had the male vocals come in, they did a little bit, and then the female vocals came in, and back to the male, back to the female. I was like, okay, so this is a conversation. And so the violin and the glockenspiel, this is their conversation. And there was a certain point in the track, I guess about 2 minutes in, the male vocals just quit. Instrumental and female vocals only. And with 30 or 40 seconds to go, I said, okay, that's it. This is the musical embodiment of this conversation between the ethereal voice and our narrator, our main character. And since they're not communicating, we're not going to bring that cool lick back. But then they did bring it back. So that completely blows that hypothesis out of the water. But I do want to point this out, which is a little bit of a expansion on that idea there. Every single time the female vocals come in, they are hazy and drenched in reverb. I mentioned this on track 2, how it muddies up that chorus where it's present. But it sort of dawned on me that more often than not, they are this like really hazy reverberary sound. And often the music will mimic that. If this is the voice of magic, of imagination, it could be the voice that's leading our narrator through this story, our main character. It makes sense that it would be a bit more disembodied because this is a journey of isolation. It is a task of one person, and assuming I'm not totally misreading the situation, it is the task of one person to resurrect someone dear to them. This could be the memory of the person talking to him. It could be the spirit of this person talking to them. It could be a totally different supernatural entity speaking to them. But it is something that, to me, based on the way that it's delivered, the production of the vocals, and the production of the music that accompanies these vocals, most of the time, it feels disembodied. It feels misty and hazy, ethereal. It lacks physicality. And I really love that. So this is something I've talked about in the past, right? Is if you're going to have multiple characters in a concept story, whether that's a whole album or just one song, I prefer multiple vocalists. That way I can keep up with everything, and there's a sonic and timbral difference between characters, and I can know who's talking from what perspective, when, where, why, all of this stuff. But this actually takes it one step further. We're actually getting information about this character, not by what they're saying, but how it's being delivered. And if there is at any point in the next 20 minutes that this voice no longer is disembodied and has a body for the voice to come from, if at that moment the vocals lose the reverb and become very physical and direct, that would be emotionally phenomenal. I kind of hope that's what's going to happen if they go that route at all. Again, I don't even know who this character is. To me, it's just some voice. But I think that would be a very cool idea. And the thing is, like I talked about last track, as far as production goes, Major Parkinson know how to squeeze all the emotion out of the composition through its presentation. And something like this feels like something if they were going to do, they're going to do it this way. I have faith in that. Now, scenes from Edison's Black Maria. That is not the word I thought was going to be there. It stopped with an M, and I had to highlight it and wait for the hover text to come up for the whole title. Edison's Black Maria. What does that even mean? Anyways, this was a purely instrumental track. And generally hopeful, and then not, and then very not. For just being over a minute and a half long, it actually engaged with a couple of different emotions, and I like the transformation between them. We took the energy that we had at the end of track 4's Isabel and moved into a little bit more positivity, which, we just had 2 songs about, hey, dude, don't lose the light in your life. Don't lose your childhood imagination. Don't lose your joy. Don't lose the magic of life. And then we have a song that starts out very bright. I'm like, dude, this is excellent. I really like where this is going. We have this nice trajectory of emotional resonance. We're going to have a couple high songs, high energy, brighter, and then we'll hit a peak and then a big low point for like the climax of the album. And then our denouement will bring us into something a bit more relaxed or maybe celebratory or joyous or something along those lines. Very typical storytelling beats. And the end of this track completely ruined that hypothesis. Great job, Major Parkinson. You continue to make me feel like I have no idea what you're doing. And I am overwhelmed by it. I love it. It's like a good film or a good book or something where you start to see common ideas that you see in other forms of the media. You begin to make predictions based off of that. Oh, I've seen this before, that kind of thing. You get a couple things right, and then it's just curveball after curveball after curveball. And before you know it, you struck out. You can't anticipate anything anymore. Interesting, I say curveball because in 2 tracks, we have a song called Baseball. So there's that. I don't usually use baseball analogies. And here we are doing that on an album with a song called Baseball. Words, man, they have power. They influence and manipulate. But the end of the song dips down quite a bit. It's dark, it's angry. And it takes us into Madeleine Crumbles. I said in 2 tracks. Actually, Baseball is our next track. Madeleine Crumbles is not where I thought we were going to go based on the ending. Dude, this is fun. It's bouncy. It's catchy. It is playful. It's joyous. It is a lot of things that the album just hasn't been so far. It feels out of place, but it fits. I don't quite know how to interpret that yet. It's got to be production still that allows it to feel like it fits in this series of rather heavy, bleak tracks. But it isn't always consistently bright either. The verses, particularly with the male vocals, bring the energy way down, focus on a lower resonant, darker tone, bit of weight to it. And there's even a couple of instrumental passages that tend to focus on this gloomier side of things as well. But it's always met with opposition. The violins, the glockenspiel, the airy female vocals, sometimes even a rogue guitar will come in with something bright and joyful, hopeful, spontaneously bouncy. I mean, this is not an album that has put a smile on my face too often. It's a thinking album. It's a feeling gloomy album. And I'm dancing to this song. I'm bouncing all over the place. I have this dumb grin on my face. It is fun. I'm really curious what's going on here lyrically. Not that I know that it's even going to mean anything, because I've lost the thread already, and catching back onto it's always difficult. But I love the yin and yang on this track. It brings us back to the feeling that I had in track 1, which was equal parts gloomy and hopeful. This one just feels more equal, but instead of trying to balance everything simultaneously, we move from heavier gloom to brighter, uplifting, lighter stuff. And I think that's excellent. The back and forth on that, it's a little jarring the first time, and it did take quite some time in the middle to get back up to that more playful side, but it was well earned, I think, by the end of it. We also had some fantastic melody writing here, a couple of solo sections that I thought were excellent, and did a great job of, once again, having this invigorating writing to the music. It's not just the chords that are interesting, calling this back to a couple analysis sections ago where I was talking about how great the chordal structure is on this, but there's also great melodic writing too. The storytelling through the melody is either fine in that it reinforces what's already at stake here in the atmosphere, or it embellishes on it and adds to it even more, adding more emotional complexity to what the chord progression's already doing. And here I thought we got a little bit of both of those, kind of adding to some of the weight in sections, but also having the instruments, the solos, pull the song out of that gloom to take us to the ending of the track. Yeah, this was a nice little 5-minute spurt right here. A little bit of bounciness, probably to take us to something heavy. We're going to hit the longest, probably peak of the album, I'm going to assume. Our next track is 10.5 minutes, and that's followed up with just 8-9 minutes, give or take, to wrap the song up. All right, let's hit some lyrics on track 6, then we'll dive into the big one. All right, once again, I'm lost on the lyrics. The imagery continues to obfuscate the information that's underneath all of it all. But what I find really interesting is the callbacks. It feels like a trippy psychedelic film where the visual elements like sort of loop in on itself and come back later in times that you're like, oh, that's a neat callback, but why? Why is it present here too? That's what I feel with the lyrics. We have the wild blue yonder is referenced for the second time. Following the moon is brought up for the third time. We have the mist across the asylum, which is from, is that Isabel that was in? The sirens that echoed in the snow, I think, is before the helmets. You must believe in magic comes back again. It also brings up the black confetti that we saw in Night Hitcher, I think it was. And it's just like, I continue to see all these callbacks, but I don't get it. It's just visual imagery that continues to get showcased. I don't see the underlying element here. I'm kind of hoping that this turns into one of those stories where the first time you read it, you're kind of confused. There's a big aha moment at the end. And the second time that you experience a story, you have the key to unlock the puzzle in real time. And on that second go through, you're like, oh, that's what this meant, and that's what that meant, and that's why that works there. And it just isn't confusing once you have that one piece of the puzzle to fill everything in. But as of right here, I'm looking at this, I'm reading these words, and I'm like, what? It says, I remember the wine and your tomes of wonder, but no nursery rhyme in the book of hunger. And as you clung to a twine in your final slumber, I said, this leads to a kite up in the wild blue yonder. Follow the moon, wind in the willows, in the hollow coriander clouds. Dance in the mist across the asylum where the sirens echoed in the snow. Beyond the afterglow, you must believe in magic. It does end with a single word though, melancholia. If nothing else, I think that's a fitting word to put in an album that is generally gloomy. I've mentioned before that I don't really get much of a melancholic edge to it, but it's quite possible that that is what they're aiming for on some level. It's not quite the most sorrowful atmosphere that I've ever been placed within, but it definitely carries a weight and a gloom to it that could be read as melancholic. But I'm just really curious at this point. We're wrapping up the second act here. We're going into our final, well, wrapping up our second act because we're done with track 6 of 9. But there's a good 20 minutes music left, which means we're really only in the last half here. I find it interesting when albums do that, where time-wise you might reach the midpoint, but track-wise you haven't, or vice versa. Kind of start with longer or shorter tracks and change to the opposite end of that spectrum as we go through the album. Anyways, this is track 7. As I mentioned earlier, it is the longest one on the album. It's called Baseball. It's 10.5 minutes. Let's see what they're going to do with this.
Carry the weight of the world in your hand, what a feeling.
The organ is an interesting choice.
Defying gravity with murmurs of
Carry the weight in the world, what a feeling. That's from track 1.
the shore glissades in the penny arcade. I was kneeling. You played the bass, I played the ball. I was the hunchback on your side.
He said you play the bass and I played the ball.
You painted Japanese autumn fire, maple trees and kites, repairing matters consumed by death of a canvas. Now all the memories are coming back to life again.
I'm sorry, excuse me? Very cardiacs with this chord progression.
Back from the dead, the crowd is waiting in anticipation. Slapping some lead and the guitar is on the gun.
Yeah, dude, the layering of this
And with the crack of the
trombone with the vocals, that's delicious.
and the ghost of Tully Sparks, gang plan, hidden hand, the pulse of Karl Marx, red band, place a star strangled banner in reverse. Let up, it's baseball. Paralyzed with joy, marching up the manor marble steps, you can see the gleaming pantaloons on the frosted wedding cake anchored to your mind. See the jives and fisticuffs of men and girls who came and went like moths, harvesting your dreams of jitterbug flappers as the penguin in the pits pushes you around.
I like that bass tone.
And then I woke up in a fevered hypertension, a silent movie on imperial expansion. I put my head inside a paddle of the glove just like a baseball. They picked a bullet from his mutilated shoulder, the son of Sisyphus, the pusher of the boulder. Stitched them together with a needle and a twine just like a baseball. I got his baseball. I've got his baseball. I've got his baseball.
What?
You breathe the fragrance of your purple cigarettes, stumbling through the ballroom.
Much like track 4, this one is frustratingly enjoyable. Like, it has so many good parts to it, but you just can't ever anticipate anything about it. Dude, the drum beat on this, it's such a dancey track, but it doesn't feel like you should dance to it. I think this is the first section that I recognized from coming in at an earlier point.
A tapestry of rocket ships under salamander skies, silhouettes of dinosaurs and cogwheels.
Silhouettes of dinosaurs, salamander skies. What does that mean? I recognize this part too.
Now all the memories are coming back to life again. The crepuscular rays and the penny arcades and the kneeling. You were a domino collapsing like a high rise to the ground.
Yeah, just very cardiac. Very cardiac. From a purely musical perspective, I think that ending went on a bit too long, but it's quite possible that lyrically it makes sense. I do feel like the song kind of went on a little too long in general, but I think a lot of that is just the feeling of being lost. Subsequent listens, you kind of know what you're in for. Maybe you even understand what the song is attempting to do. I had such a strong understanding of the album at the beginning, and I've just been losing it more and more. And I'm not able to, craft these narratives or these stories alongside the music anymore. I think part of that is that I'm lost narratively, both musically and lyrically, but also that a song like this, and much like Isabel before as the other long track on this album, they go through a lot of things. When we look at tracks 1 and 2, which was also close to the 10 minute, actually over 10 minutes, they work together, but each song kind of focused on one vibe. So you really only have like 2 main ideas and then a couple of variations within them. But with a track like track 4's Isabella, track 7 Baseball, we're looking at like 5, 6, 7 different ideas. Sometimes we bring an idea back as a variation of that idea. So maybe the same melody with a different atmosphere, maybe the same foundation with a new melody on top of it, maybe new vocals that weren't there previously. It ends up becoming very complex, very dense, and difficult to follow through. I think a good film analogy would be a lot of really quick smash cuts back to back in order to create a feeling of a whirlwind or a flurry. Just a bunch of ideas happening in rapid succession. It's really difficult to capture and understand the details because of the rapidity of visual change. And you're really just left with the flashes of moments. And that's what these songs feel like to me. There's so much stuff going on. And for the life of me, I cannot get all of it on a single listen. And so I'm lost. I'm being pulled through the maze by some invisible force. I don't know where I am. I'm not seeing any landmarks in this maze. I just know that I'm going forward. Is it the right direction? I don't know. I'm being led through this, and I have to just trust that we are going where we need to go. Now, fortunately, this isn't a maze. This is a song, and it can only go one way, and that's towards the end of the album. So from that point of view, the leader is right, but it doesn't make me feel any less lost in this. This song in particular has some really interesting shifts and changes in it too. There's dancey parts, there's gloomy parts with dancey drum beats behind them. There are Cardiacs in style inspired horn sections. There are straight up Cardiacs inspired moments complete with that. I can't remember the exact chord progression, but it's what the Cardiacs love to use. You see it all over that group's works. It's 3 specific chords, and it creates this feeling of a lack of resolution really strongly, like you're just kind of going in circles. And that doesn't help either. The feeling of just an endless loop in the music alongside, the brass and the bright bouncy sounds. The 3/4 that gets used throughout this a lot, even though it's technically 7. There's a lot of 7 in here, 7/4, 7/8, that gets grouped up into chunks of 3, and then 4, which is 3 plus 1. So you're getting the 3/3 that Cardiacs likes to use a lot, but you're getting this plus 1, this extra rogue beat that trips you up at the end of places. So that just makes it even more awkward to get through, or more difficult to understand rhythmically, to groove with. The vocals also have a rhythmic staccato delivery in this one that kind of juxtaposes the slow, methodic old man telling you his life story that we had towards the beginning of the album, and moves into that, rhythmically dense Cardiac style of delivery. This was a wild ride, and to me it felt like Tom Waits, once again thrown into the mix, with Cardiacs working with David Lynch in order to create a film, but only the musical soundtrack to it? What if we told a movie through music alone? And somehow you get Tom Waits and Cardiacs to write that soundtrack, and that's what we have here. Now, I will say one thing that Major Parkinson has done more than any other band I think I've ever listened to is have me say these wild sentences. Who did I bring up earlier? Dream Theater and Emily Autumn with Tom Waits. The vocals and the heavy percussive use are just exceptionally Tom Waits to me. The gloominess of it, like everything in here has a big Tom Waits influence. I don't know if necessarily they've heard of Tom Waits and Tom Waits really has that big of an influence on it, but somewhere down the line, whoever they were influenced is probably influenced by Tom Waits. There's, degrees of separation if it wasn't a direct relationship here. But his DNA is all over this. The storytelling, the mood, the vocal delivery. It's just the song structure that tends to differ. And that goes in wildly different directions on all of these tracks. What do I even say? Because I didn't grasp this at all. I know we had some pretty good analysis on the first 4 tracks, give or take. 6 was a little looser. This is just not going to... I'm not going to be able to tell you anything you probably didn't hear already. But I do want to point out the horns. I love the horn work in here. First of all, we talk about intentional production, about pairing the right instruments together for effect. The trombone with that gritty, snarly, almost growling vocals. Yes, dude, phenomenal. Not just for that layering on its own, which, dude, that texture is fantastic. I love those 2 instruments together. But also to introduce brass for the first time in here, to kind of sneak it underneath something else, to pair it with an instrument that has been present through most of this album, all of this album. And then to say, hey, the trombone's already here. Why not let him play a little something? And then we have a trombone solo, and then later on the trombone introduces the trumpet, and now we have both of these instruments. Now we have a freaking brass section. Like, dude, just the subtle evolution of the song was phenomenal. And like I said, it's twists and turns. We're almost done with this album. We only have 10 minutes to go. And they're like, you know what we need? Brass instruments. And this is what I was talking about too, uncompromising vision. I'm really curious how many people are in this band. Because towards the beginning of the album, I had mentioned that I thought a lot of this was synthesized. And I kind of felt that way up until 4, 5, 6. And somewhere recently around this middle part of the album, it kind of dawned on me that not all of these sounds, I think, could easily be done digitally. Now, this came out in 2017, even almost a decade ago now. We had some pretty good tech inside of virtual libraries and stuff like that for sound production without the acoustic instrumentation. It's quite possible this is all still synthesized, but there's a couple of things in here that I think I would be surprised if I found out it's all done on a keyboard. Simply because they're doing a really great job of capturing some of these instruments' specific flares that typically get left out when these instruments are digitized. What was it early on? Oh, it was some of the strings early on, like track 1 or 2. And the strings, I was like, yeah, dude, the way that the strings are coming in and going out, it's very rigid, it's very static. That sounds digital to me. But as we get further into this album, I'm listening to the string work. I'm like, actually, no, this sounds pretty acoustic. There's some little nuance in here. Did I miss that nuance earlier? Or has this been a very interesting decision to start fully digital and slowly incorporate acoustic instruments for these parts into the album? Because honestly, that's a bonkers idea. I want to do something like that now. I would need some big theme to match it. And if this is still a descent into, I'm kind of thinking someone's mind at this point, just because of the way things overlap and become very dreamlike and surreal. That's the word I think I want for the lyrics. I haven't checked out the lyrics for this song yet, but I was talking about how the lyrics are like looping in on themselves to a point where they're not really making sense, but there's a lot of callbacks. Surreal. That's what the lyrics feel like to me. And so entering one's mind. But I think that would be interesting too, where reality has synthetic sounds, and as you go into the mind, you find more and more real acoustic sounds. See, that's a pretty cool thing. I don't know if that's what it's doing, primarily because, well, I don't know if that's actually what it's doing sonically, but I have no idea what the story's doing. So, good luck for me guessing if that's actually what's going on here. But that sounds like a really freaking cool idea. That's that kind of high concept stuff that I love to hear in music. Jeez. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for baseball's analysis. I can't even call it analysis. I've just been talking about it and my relationship to it. This is my reaction to baseball. I don't usually chalk up 20 minutes of conversation as a reaction, but here I think that's the appropriate word for it. I'm not going to get anything out of it, but let's hit the lyrics on this massive 10-minute song. Okay, so this is actually quite interesting. We're starting to see where a lot of these phrases that have been randomly placed in other tracks, where they have come from, almost as if these memories are starting to reform, and it's no longer just a specific detail of the memory, but the entirety of it. We kick it off with "Carry the weight of the world in your hand." What a feeling. This is from the first or second track on the album. This comes pretty much from the start of the album. It says, "I was the hunchback on your side. You married the mildew and gossamer under the skylight. You painted Japanese autumn fire maple trees and kites. Riparian meadows consumed by the death of a canvas. Now all the memories are coming back to life." Remembering the specifics rather than just one rogue detail. It says, "Back from the dead, the crowd is waiting in anticipation. Ducks on the pond and Miss Truman with a black umbrella, and with the crack of the bat comes the main attractions. Anne Rand, Peter Pan, and the ghost of Tully Sparks. Deadpan, hidden hand in the pose of Karl Marx. Brass band plays the Star-Spangled Banner in reverse. Batter up, it's baseball." To me, this feels like a constant firing of synapses, jumping from one memory to another, bringing the entire history of a person back to life. But it also, in a very surreal way, puts it all together in a single moment, too. It mentions that, this hidden hand, this Peter Pan, the Ayn Rand, and the ghost of Tully Sparks are all playing baseball together. It's the main attraction as the crack of the bat sounds. And then talks about a frosted wedding cake with gleaming pantaloons. Says the party's over. There's a fisticuff. So we're getting into a fight over here. It says men and girls who came and went like moths, harvesting your dreams of jitterbug flappers as the penguin in the pit pushes you around. This is interesting. The harvesting of your dreams. Is it the literal dreams of this dream world? Or is it the aspirations that this person wanted and had stripped away from them? Are we looking at a supernatural jitterbug flapper? No, the moths, that's it. Or are we looking at physical people who came and destroyed your dreams? It says there's a choir in your mind that can tell you anything, but you can't always hear the voice that is worth remembering. Time is running out. You don't get to choose what memories you keep, but you have a voice in your mind that tries to point you in the right direction. We have another stanza that feels like things coming together, a series of ideas all kind of pointing towards a specific moment. It just takes a while to get there. And then we have the section that was sung a couple of times. You breathe the fragrance of your purple cigarettes, stumbling through the ballroom of the blind, a tapestry of rocket ships under salamander skies, silhouettes of dinosaurs and cogwheels. Carry the weight of the world in your hand. What a feeling. Now all the memories are coming back to life. The crepuscular? What is that word? Crepuscular? Rays and the penny arcades and the kneeling. You were a domino collapsing like a high rise to the ground. Crepuscular is of like twilight. Occurring at dawn or dusk or both. Okay, so the twilight rays and the penny arcades and the kneeling, so nighttime stuff. You were a domino collapsing like a high rise to the ground. From here we enter into probably the most distinct description of a place. It says, "Oh, what a night. Can you feel the music? Puerto Rican boys are dancing in the hall. Hey, Chardonnay, lilac of the seasick. I'm gonna take you from the brim to the dregs. Month of May, picnic with my best friends. A splendid tonic for my violent delirium." Kind of painting this specific picture of the dance hall and the drinks that are being drunk there, and the month that it is, and what's going on here. It all keeps coming back to baseball, though. And I think this is just part of the surrealism of it. We saw at the beginning, you played the bass, I played the ball. Later on, we saw the idea of somebody being stitched back together with needle and twine like a baseball. And there's always the coming back to the idea of people playing baseball. The phrase batter up gets brought up a couple of times as well. And it just feels like a very Lynchian fever dream. But not completely random. There's a point to all of this. And again, I feel like it is a coalescing of memories, of sifting through vague random details and finding the larger picture to a lot of these. Almost as if someone is getting their memories back, either being brought back from the dead, mind being jump-started, or it could just be someone being brought out of some sort of mental haze. I'm not quite sure what direction they're going with it. It's much like some of the other tracks, rather vague, but it is starting to help me paint a picture of what this album is attempting to say or do. And with that, we're going to move into the final bit. The next track is not even 3 minutes long, so I'm assuming I'm just going to let it roll into the final track, and we'll just see this as the final chunk of the song, sort of like what we should have done with the first two songs being the first chunk. I suppose there is a case, though, where I need to stop it and talk about it, in which case we might have two more listening bits ahead of us. Let's dive in, though. See what's going on with Strawberry Suicide. Very haunting, but optimistic. Once again, quite a complex emotion. Beautiful, like, toy piano sounds on the lead.
Is it me you're looking for? I see you're getting old. We were younger then, but something came along. I was occupied by someone that you know. That you know, I know. You can't remember anything at all, but still
Those chord progressions, the warmth of the guitar, his Emotional delivery.
Emotion wears a name in the ever-changing chorus. I will play out of tune in a chain of separate lives. Strawberry suicide.
Just leaving the chorus on this unresolved moment.
Was it me or was it you? The story's getting old. You were younger then, but something made you cold. You were occupied by someone that I know. That I know, I know, I know, I know, you know. You don't remember anything at all, do you? The song remains the same. We're still salt in a sugar bowl, and every motion wears a name. In the ever-changing chorus, I still play out of tune. In a chain of separate lives, I got something to tell you, but I haven't found the words. Strawberry suicide.
I like this song. In an album full of resonant emotional soundscapes, I think this kind of takes the cake because of its simplicity. We have some nice twists and turns on the chord progression. We have the division between the brighter, more optimistic melody and the darker, gloomier chords. Also, the timbre change too, between the toy piano being brighter and the acoustic piano being more resonant and darker. But I think his vocals are what make this stand out, and it's such a small detail. Yes, the chord progression is emotional. I think that there's a very strong melancholic edge to it that, especially paired up against the more hopeful melody, really elevates the gloominess of it, the sorrow. But the vocals are what stand out to me. The first chorus setup was fine, but you can certainly feel, at least I do anyways, his vocals feel different than the beginning of the album. There's just less energy here, and I think it comes through in two ways. The first being that I think for the quieter, lower part, there's just less energy put into it. And it just doesn't come through as clearly. It's not as full-bodied. It has like holes in it. Parts where it's almost as if you're only getting the air for a split second rather than the vibration of the vocal cords to create the pitch. But there's also a really heavy compression, and I urge you to go back and listen to this yourself. Probably not in this video. Go and check out the YouTube link in the description. I don't put YouTube links in the descriptions for albums. Find it on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. If you have a Spotify or a Deezer or any sort of music subscription, go check it out there. You're going to get a higher quality version anyways. Totally worth it. Listen to the vocals, particularly in the second chorus, and they are ridiculously compressed. There is so much crackling and white noise on the vocals that it's kind of ridiculous, but it exists only on the outskirts. It really isn't what's forefront and present with the vocals, so it's really easy to miss it, but it's not disguised in the mix either. It is left there. It almost sounds as if this is being said to me from a recording. Something on a phone with the speakers just not great, or maybe a tape recording where you have a little tape player and you're listening to this person sing this to you. And I think that adds a lot to it. I don't know if this compression has always been there. I'd even say that beyond the compression, because compression should take care of this, but there's even a little bit of clipping to it. But again, it's like a second track that sits on the outskirts and is designed to, I don't know, add character to the main vocal bit here in the middle. It's a really interesting texture to add to it. But it feels like this is a message being delivered rather than something a narrator is saying to me. And that adds another layer to the emotional resonance. Why am I hearing it this way? Why isn't it as clear as I've heard the vocals in the past? What does that represent? Why does it feel like this is something dealing with memories that we have been leaning into for a couple of tracks here? Why does it feel like something I'm trying to force myself to remember? And why does he feel like he's in so much pain recording this? And most of the time, when I ask these questions and try to figure out what the story is going for, it's more melancholic. I don't have any fully supported ideas that I want to present and say, this is where I think things are going. But the general idea of listening to a message like this feels melancholic, like it was the last thing recorded. But then I also think about the vocal delivery on that second chorus, and that hits. I have never on this album heard this vocalist project like this. They have been weary, they have been worn down. Everything they've delivered has been in a very comfortable range, a very comfortable delivery and power and volume. And here, there's projection that we haven't seen. They fully believe at this moment these words are more important than anything that has been said prior, and they want to make sure that they are heard. And it feels desperate. And that, with the music, with the compression, with the contrast between the toy piano and the acoustic, all of it just accentuates the pain of this song. It isn't just a gloomy, melancholic track. It is an emotionally painful one. And I find it really interesting that as much as I have praised the emotional resonance of all the songs in the past, it's the one that's barely doing anything that really hits me. And maybe this is just because I pay too much attention, too much critical attention to the other tracks, given all of the stuff going on. Maybe a more casual listen will have me impacted by those just as much, but this track right here went straight for the heart, and it did not miss. Let's hit some lyrics. This is a conversation between two people, but I actually think it's a conversation between two selves. In a sense, it's the current self and the past self, not in a time travel-y kind of way, but when you get older, you look back at who you were. I'm not going to say I'm super old, but I'm to a point where I can do this already and see a very different person back then than who I am today. And it's sort of having a conversation with yourself, with your past self, while you're also in this state of blurry memories. Again, I'm not sure why the memories are blurry, but this has been a consistent theme for a couple of tracks now. It's pretty clear that this is all in the mind. we have a verse chorus setup, but the first verse and chorus, at least the way I read it, is the past self. The second verse and chorus are the present or future self. And they play off of each other's lines. It's kind of repeating the same thing, but the shift in perspective adds a lot of weight. The first verse says, "Hey, is it me you're looking for?" And so far, this album has been about trying to capture memories, to remember stuff from the past. Yeah, the younger self asking the future self, "Hey, are you looking for me? Are you going through all these memories trying to find me?" He says, "I see you're getting old. We were younger then, but something came along. I was occupied by someone that you know I know." The second verse says, "Hey, was it me or was it you? The story is getting old. We were younger then, but something made you cold. You were occupied by someone that I know you know." I really like these shifts. The younger self saying, "Yeah, I see you're getting pretty old. We were young then, but things changed." And the older one comes at it from a different perspective. He says the story is getting old. Maybe this is a view of looking back on the past and realizing, dude, you were just doing the same stuff over and over and over. But it could also be that he doesn't view himself as old, just that his story is getting a bit long. And the younger one said, "We were younger, but something came along." The older one says, "You were younger, but something made you cold." And I think this is interesting. Going back to, the young one thinks he's young, right? Dude, I'm young. I've got youth. I'm great. But the older one says, even you at your young age compared to me, at one time were younger, but you became cold. And this brings back childhood imagination. This is the magic of life. When you were a child, life was joyful, it was magical, but now you're a teenager. You're so nihilistic. You're so angry. You're so cold to the world. It's about perspective at this point, about a shifted perspective, about how things might make sense in the moment, but time always gives us an interesting new way to look on it. And I think that's what happens here, and it's so beautifully written. The younger one in their chorus states, "You can't remember anything at all, but still the song remains the same. Now we are salt in a sugar bowl, and every motion wears a name." In the ever-changing chorus, "I will play out of tune in a chain of separate lives. Strawberry suicide." The older version, very small detail changes, says, "You don't remember anything at all, do you?" I think that's interesting. The older person not being able to remember things. Oh, yeah. Maybe. Oh, dude, is this an album about dementia? I wonder now. Anyways, the older person not being able to remember, the younger one just like, dude, that's just life, man. You got old. But the older one looking to the younger one and saying, dude, you don't remember anything either. Talking about childhood and the joys and the magic of life back then. He takes that line, you can't remember anything. And he says, well, let me change this a little bit. You don't remember anything. But it means something totally different this time around. I love that. Most of the rest is the same. He says, I still play out of tune in a chain of separate lives, but I've got something to tell you. I haven't found the words, though. Strawberry suicide. I don't know what strawberry suicide is, though. I mean, it's the name of the song. It just doesn't mean anything to me. But I really love the concept of this track. The younger person or the younger self thinking they've got it all figured out, looking at the older version and saying, dude, you're not cool anymore. You know, you've lost your edge, you don't remember anything. Dude, I don't want to be you. And the older person thinking, dude, you've forgotten everything that was important to you. Who are you even now? You're old compared to your childhood self too, just like I'm old compared to you. And it's always about, the way I interpret this is constant growth, that we change often over time, that we never know what's up. And we will go through some weird phases, and hopefully we can come out the other side and look back on them and think, dude, I'm so glad I got out of that. Rather than looking back on your past and just thinking, yeah, dude, I was so much cooler back then. I think in some regards, that's healthy too. But in most regards, sorry, let me rephrase that. I think that can be healthy in small doses too. But also, if you view your teenage years as the peak of your life, I mean, it might be a little hint that you should probably find some growth now. You've experienced so much more life. How haven't you changed? And if you haven't changed, why not? Maybe it's time to explore more. Get outside your comfort zone. I love this though. This is just a beautifully heartbreaking track. And I love too, because I had mentioned that the vocals in the second verse are more projected, more directed. I might even feel a little bit of anger in them now that I know what's being said here. It's a little bit of rage towards that teenage, what would you even call it? Like the mental idea of teenage invincibility. I don't know, what would we call this? Is there a phrase for that? Where teenagers think they know everything. They finally reached, being an adult. You're 18 now, you have your car, you can move out, you might have a job. And now you think you've seen it all. You've got everything figured out. Even more particular, if we go back to a track like Isabel and looking at the idea of, how anti-nihilistic that track is. Maybe they had a rather nihilistic view of life. They've lost all of that magic and wonder and imagination of their childhood and replaced it with hatred. Thought joy was a weakness, so they avoided it, and they have such an anger for wasting time in their life as a younger person. And just expressing that anger. Dude, this is highlight of the album. And it's a solid album. I've really enjoyed myself here. I mean, this is a musical without the visual component. I honestly don't think you'd have to change much to make a musical out of this. It wouldn't surprise me if someone's like, oh, actually they did put a show tune, a musical together of this somewhere down the road. It feels like it's just a natural movement for this. And I'm on board for anything that's a bit more theatric and rock opera and stuff like this. The atmospheres are palpable. I've commended the composition on this several times, the attention to detail. But right here, everything just, everything gels. This is a perfect showcasing of all of the strengths of Major Parkinson in the most directed, razor-honed delivery of it. Good stuff. Let's wrap this up. Final 6 minutes. Blackbox title track here. What does this mean? What does this represent? Let's find out.
Blackbox, calorie chart, owl's talons clenching my heart. Blackbox, hit the bell jar. Can you hear me? Blackbox, Tesla coil kid, crying in a pitch pigeonhole, that's what you did in the black box, tap on the lid. Can you hear me?
Very marchy. Think about how much this sounds like a nursery rhyme. Still have the marching snare in the back. A little bit of a victorious sound here. I felt that thematically, this song brings the album pretty much full circle, and it finds the most extremes on both sides of this. This song feels the most hopeless at times, but it also feels the most optimistic at others. There's also the stark difference between the verse and the chorus, with the chorus coming in with the well, once again, the female vocals come in. They're very reverberant, very wavy. But something that I mentioned, we'll bring that back up in a second. We have the female vocals here, though, and this is a bit lighter in tone, in texture, but it still carries a bit of gloom and weight to it harmonically. This is contrasted, though, with the very warlike we have the marching snare going on in the background. There's explosions and banging sounds and all sorts of stuff going off. The brass is big and blasty, and it sounds like war. That is such a stark contrast to the levity, at least sonic levity, in the chorus. Like I mentioned, the highest highs on the album so far, but I also think the lowest lows. And I was curious where these highs were going to go, because after the second verse, second chorus, it was like, I don't know, 3 minutes into the song, we went into this instrumental bit, and it was very, I mentioned, triumphant. The brass had shifted from being bolsterous and explosive to proud, powerful. It wasn't scary anymore. It was still big, but it was triumphant. Victory was at hand. But the song leans back into a darkness before wrapping up on just the piano. And this came across as rather somber to me. We're playing the same melody for the third different time. This is the third distinct group of instruments, although here it's only one. But the third distinct timbre and texture of this melody here. We've heard it in darkness, we've heard it in brightness, and now we hear it in gloom. And it almost feels like giving up all of the energy that supported the other two sections, whether it was hopeful and optimistic or hopeless and depressive, still such an extreme. Here, it's just one instrument just quietly piddling around here at the end of the song. Barely existing, slowing down even until it just stops. It holds a single note out and then disappears. As far as I see it, this is a climactic ending for sure. I'm not going to say that this is a bad way to wrap this up. This is phenomenal, but it is heartbreaking. So much hope here at the end for a good ending, and I don't think we get one. And it really looked like, as the darkness was beginning to circle in and take over, a beam of light shoots through and begins to, destroy and disintegrate the darkness, but it doesn't win. The darkness, despite being worked backwards, ends up sealing the sphere over in one final kind of sucking the music in, and what's left is this somber single piano line to leave us at the end of the album. It's heavy. Now, at the beginning, I hypothesized that we were descending in order to find a loved one. And I thought that it could have been the woman's voice was that guiding us somehow, some way, and that maybe at one point I was hoping that maybe it would be solidified sonically, now no longer having this airy reverb to it. We never get that. And that's because, as we saw towards the end of this album, we're focusing on memories, and I think that the Lover Lower Me Down at the beginning is more about diving into the mind. But I did notice something else about the female vocals too. Frequently, when they come in isolation, because sometimes they are alongside the male vocals, call and response, or counterpoint, or harmony even, but when they are isolated, there's a really big nursery rhyme element to it. What was another track? Was it Isabella? Yeah, call her, tell her that you love her madly. Yeah, very nursery, not nursery rhyme, like, what do you call it? Like a playground song at school? School ground song, maybe something like that. And we heard that on this track too. Something like Blackbox, calorie chart, owl's talons, clenching my heart, hit the bell, jarred, bang, bang, can you hear me? It's very, I don't know. I wish I could put into words what makes a song sound like a schoolyard song to be sung by children. But I find that as I think about some of the vocal melodies that this vocalist has had on this album, they're all kind of that. Little schoolyard songs. And, thinking that, Strawberry Suicide is about talking to your younger self, telling them that they kind of wasted their time being edgy and nihilistic, and they should have continued on with that joy that they had when they were younger. We also have, what is it, Night Hitcher or Before the Helmets, one of the two, focusing on childhood nostalgia and saying, don't lose that magic that you had at one time. And I really think that this album is focusing on something around childhood in general. I don't know. We got to get to the lyrics, I think, on this final song and see if I can't connect something there. But we have a lot of imagery on this album about, toys and childlike imagination and, toys and childlike imagination and dinosaur tapestry, right? And all the fantastic stuff of being a kid and wanting this stuff and playing with it. I remember it now. I think it was Night Hitcher when he mentioned that, he had all these dolls and toys and dinosaur stuff, and then he stole his dad's eyes. I couldn't figure out what that meant. No, he saw the world through the eyes of a jaded adult. That's what happened there. That's when he lost his imagination. See what I mean? Right? This is something that, like a good thriller film or novel, you're going to unlock something at the end. You're gonna get given that last piece, and it's gonna recontextualize the entire artwork. I really think if I go back through these lyrics, well, I'm thinking back on some of them now. Maybe it wouldn't be a total unlock, but I do think that without having even gotten to the lyrics for this track 9, I do think I'd have a better understanding of the album already. And there's this whole child and memory and nostalgia and magic of imagination angle that I would love to view the rest of this album through that perspective, because I did not have that for the first 5 tracks or so. It does make me wonder, though, who this female vocal is. The one that continues to attempt to push the narrator towards, the more whimsical side of things. All right, let me hit some lyrics on Blackbox, and then we'll wrap this video up. The black box appears to be a metaphorical space where you hide the parts of your past that, I don't know, you don't want to think about anymore, possibly. The chorus says, black box, calorie chart, owl's talons clenching my heart, black box, hit the bell jar, can you hear me? Black box, Tesla coil, kid, crying in a pigeonhole, that's what you did in the black box, tap on the lid, can you hear me? That's kind of vague. But then we get to the verse. The raven lock, the brazen lid, the rattling chains, and the secrets we hid in the black box. The solid rope, the bridal noose, the matter of self and the substance abuse in the black box. My feather star, you swam too far. The title bore a belvedere. You hiss your breathing, you run your swimming. You kissed the razor in the black box. Kiss the razor, I'm going to assume, is metaphor for suicide. Something that he leaves in the black box. To forget about, to kind of move away from. The second verse says, you're in the black box, fish out of water. Welcome to dystopia, plain as the color. This, I think, is interesting. The black box is a place to put things that you don't want to remember. But instead of putting memories, I mean, we've talked about someone committing suicide. There's the rope and the bridal noose. Substance abuse maybe is something that he wants to keep in his past. Maybe it's just things that he wants to hide from other people too. But he put a whole self in there, a whole portion of his past. It doesn't fit, doesn't belong. It's fish out of water. In the black box, though, there's no color. It's just dystopic. It's plain. It's not where a conscious person or entity should be. A consciousness. That's the word I was looking for. It says, you took the beating. Jump rope, hopscotch, bloody knuckle, hucklebuckle, beanstalk. Miss Mary Mac never came home. Jump rope, hopscotch, Miss Mary Mac. This is all kid stuff. Took the beating might imply a childhood bully. The bloody knuckles could line up with that. Maybe it's about pulling this abuse that they dealt with as a child out of the black box, and they're dealing with it now. And it's causing all these other memories to come flooding out as well. Lowering down from the opening tracks isn't just a generic, let's go down into my mind. This is a psychology session, a therapist session. Getting into a person's brain, figuring out where the issues lie that cause them to act out or do things the way that they do now. The bones that they were carrying at the beginning that they wanted to resurrect in a very ritualistic style wasn't someone else's. It was their own. It's their history they were wanting to resurrect. Dude. It also says Miss Mary Mac never came home, which is, Miss Mary Mac, all dressed in black. I don't know if that's like universal for like kids to just know that song, but it's certainly something from my childhood. But Miss Mary Mac never came home. That's a very specific thing. Could have just said Miss Mary Mac. Could have said Miss Mary Mac all dressed in black to go with the rhyme. That way it would have fit with jump rope and hopscotch, but never came home is not, from what I remember, a part of the song. It could be also, maybe they had a mother that abandoned them. And it's not just the abuse of childhood, but also the loss of a parent, an abandonment thing too. And now I really want to go back to some of these older lyrics from this perspective, and also knowing lyrics that would pop up later and hear how they're presented in these earlier instances. Yeah, wonderful right here. I don't rate albums usually because I think rating art is not usually productive, but I mean, this is a big thumbs up for me. I don't know if I'd call it a perfect album, but I quite enjoyed it casually. I quite enjoyed it critically, and I think even from a thematic, artistic standpoint, it is exceptionally amazing. It does have a couple places where I'm like, oh, geez, that kind of went on a little too long. I think their two longest tracks are, they drag a little bit. But on the whole, I enjoyed every moment of this. And the slow unraveling of the story and tale was a phenomenal ride to be on. I'm glad I got to listen to this, and I'm excited to dig into that other Major Parkinson album that's requested. I don't know when we'll get to that, but I'm looking forward to it now. For those who are curious, it is an earlier album. So this was from 2017. It's their 2010 album, Songs from a Solitary Home. That's the other one that is in the queue somewhere. It'll be interesting to see what 7-year difference would do to their style and storytelling. Anyways, these are my thoughts on Major Parkinson, Blackbox. Let me know what you thought of this album. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe you have your own interpretation of things, any of that, your own perspectives and opinion on it, please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. UTC. We're going to do a live stream. Interestingly, it's going to be themed. We only have one more patron request, so we're just going to be listening to some video game music tomorrow. I figured that's kind of cool because we're on Twitch, and that's like a video game streaming platform. And, I use it for music reactions, but it's primarily for video games. So we're just going to listen to a bunch of video game soundtracks that day. So that's going to be kind of neat. And it's usually about 2 hours long. It's just chit chat. It's quite a bit more relaxed and casual than these deep dive analyses. And it's just good time, good company, good conversations, and good music. If you can make it, I highly request that you do, or I highly suggest that you do. I mean, I request it too, I suppose. The more the merrier. So it's a blast. Otherwise, Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. We'll kick it off with next week's theme, which I think we're going into the world of post-metal, is what we're doing Monday. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.